Welcome to Deep Thought. Clones wouldn't behave the same way as the originals. Clones wouldn't behave the same way as the original. Y'all know how I do. You know, a staple in science fiction, right? Like, you might have the hero and somebody say, you know what? They're going to get a DNA sample or something from the hero and then raise up a clone, right? And it's a good staple, like to replace the hero or something like that, fight the hero because they feel like, this clone will be the same way as the hero, right? Of course, they have some super science where they can accelerate the growth and everything, right? And of course, you got they've been able to clone some animals. Whether they've been able to clone human beings or something is the fodder for, some of these like supermarket gossip things, right? Whether or not it's happening yet is right at the time being it's a secret. I'm assuming they probably have, definitely tried, probably have, right? But one of the things to think about, and this, I know how my mind do. Sometimes I just be driving along and I'll just think about something abstract or something, right? But any clone, say if somebody cloned you, it wouldn't be a copy of you other than just basic DNA, maybe basic temperament, right? The reason why is very simple. We talk about the whole concept of nature versus nurture, but it's really a combination, right? Now, I'll use myself as an example, right? Say, some nefarious organization or, never know, it might be a public thing with the right money. They say, we're going to clone Rom, right? It wouldn't be smart for them to do it because then they're going to have like another megalomaniac running around in the world. But they decide they're going to clone Rom. And, even if, realistically, they probably wouldn't have some super growth process, right? And they would just raise them up, right? That clone, other than some basic stuff, right? Other than some basic DNA, would basically be another person. In fact, it would be deep to the point where that clone as an adult probably wouldn't even look the same, or it looked like no more than maybe my brother or something, right? Because it's going to be different things. See, understand, yes, you have the baby born with a certain temperament, but then those temperaments have to be activated, right? Right? Like, I give an example, right? One of the things that shaped my character was playing sports and being a team captain or a team leader in sports. Even in times I wasn't the official captain, people always recognized me as a team leader, right? Now, that leadership might not have come out unless I played sports. Now, say you have a clone and for whatever reason, somebody will say, well, we're not going to get him involved in physical activity like that. Well, first of all, he might not have the same body build, right? He might not have the same body build because he didn't exercise or, run and all of that or get disciplined by playing sports, right? He could turn out to be like grossly overweight or something because of how he's raised, right? Also, too, and I've said this publicly before about like my childhood, it wasn't like the most functional, right? So say you have a clone, but you raise it with two very functional parents or something, right? Or even hypothetically say, okay, we got this clone of you. We're going to give him to you. You raise him. I might not raise him the same. I might get him in sports and everything, but it'd be a more functional environment. So a lot of things that would have been activated weren't. Like specifically for me, I have the ability to stay calm in chaos, but I was introduced to chaos as a young child. So those skills to do that were activated. With the clone, if it's raised in a stable environment, those skills might not have a chance to activate. Like a lot of times, you're not going to see what somebody can do until they put in that position. Like in general, a lot of times people's skills don't come out or what they can truly do until they put in a bad position, right? You don't know what their organizational skills would have been like, right? Now, they might have it inherent in them, but boom, they wouldn't know. Like you might have somebody with a natural music talent, right? They got a natural music talent, but they're not introduced to instruments at all like as a child. You know, they not introduced to music or anything like that as a child, so they don't develop those talents. So it's going to be a change there, or even like some accidents and something. Like on my right eye, I have a scar. I have a scar I've had since I was little. My mother said I fell on a teacup, right? And I used to joke that that scar was part of my sex appeal. I say, yeah, I get these women because of the scar right there. But who's to say that didn't happen? Like I got some attention from it. Now the same kid, and of course I developed a reaction to somebody reacting to the scar, right? Now say the clone, the clone don't fall on a teacup. It doesn't get that scar. It's like boom. Also, depending on health and food, how to, might raise a clone as a vegan, right? So the clone don't get the same sicknesses. This clone might actually turn out to be physically taller than me, because it might have been in my DNA, right? It might have been in my DNA, but I might have grown taller. Maybe I had a cold at the wrong time or got sick at the wrong time, right? Because you can actually get some stuff that can stunt your growth, right? Or might play sports or be out in the sun. There's a lot of things. It's like that clone growing up, in order to get an exact copy, that clone would have to be fed the same way, exposed to the same circumstances, right? Same situations, come up in the same economic situation. Boom. Like, for example, I had mentioned before, as a child, was technically on welfare, even though, the extended family had money, right? But how much of that shaped my present character, right? Now, you get the clone. The clone don't have to worry about it. Clone living in a good neighborhood, especially if I'm raising it. Or if, this nefarious organization that cloned me put the child in, some upper middle class environment. Oh, they're going to have a different thing. In fact, they might not even the speech intonations might be different, right? Like the way I speak. Anybody, a lot of people, like I've had some people from D.C., they say, oh yeah, that's a different D.C. accent. Also a somewhat Southern accent, right? And that's because where I grew up, they were, especially in that part of D.C., well, it's like people are either from, most of the people are immigrants from the Carolinas. So I tend to have a Southern accent, even though ironically the rest of the family doesn't, but that's what I developed, right? Now, say instead of raising them in that environment where he would pick up a Southern accent, I raised them in the Midwest, which if you talk about the American English, the Midwest is probably the purest form of American English, like Midwestern speakers and how they speak, right? So instead of raising them in, Southeast D.C. where, a Southern accent is strong, and a particular D.C. accent is strong, I raised them in Iowa or something, right? And particularly around a more white environment, Midwestern white environment. The clone wouldn't even sound the same. It wouldn't even sound the same, right? And depending on, speech intonation would be different. The rhythm of the speech would be different. Also, too, just what type of people what type of other children that the clone is introduced to. And then also, like, a big part is, where I grew up, I was introduced to sex very early. A clone might be a little bit more sheltered, not hanging out in the street or like in some back alley where a little girl is showing them her private parts or something like that, right? And plus, too, one thing, Rom had developed like some heightened instincts to like feel danger. Like anybody who grew up in the inner city or something like that, or a bad neighborhood, or even a trailer park where people might be a little crazier, you develop an awareness of everything around you. But you bring up that clone in a safer environment, it won't develop that same awareness, even though that thing, the DNA, it might be locked in there, but it doesn't have a reason to come out, right? So it would never behave the same as an original, right? You know, nature makes a big difference. You know, with your DNA bank, skills bank makes a big difference, but then also the environment. So a clone wouldn't behave the same way as an original. So anyway, y'all know how I do. Deep thought. Sometimes I'm gonna throw out something just for y'all to think about. So anyway, that's all I got for now. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and blessings.